Yo, what's up guys? Someone sent me an email regarding Chris Cornell, so I thought I'd give you my thoughts. If you want deep singing knowledge you'll get nowhere else, hit that subscribe button, pound the thumbs up if you enjoy this video, let's go! Right, so Chris Cornell is a funny one. I've spoken about him a little bit before, but I'm going to go into just a little bit more detail here. I'll give you an example and let's talk through it. So in this email I've been asked, how is he doing this? I can tell what kind of voice he's using really. Sorry, I think it means I can't tell what kind of voice he's using really, if he's distorting, yelling, if it's difficult to do or not. Any thoughts? Now the first thing I'm going to say is we need to have some caveats when talking about Chris Cornell. And the reason being is because he's got a few quirks, individual quirks that make him unique as a singer, make him somebody who you can't really imitate, at least not truly authentically. Very few people are going to be able to. And the reason for that is because he didn't have clean vocal cords. And what I mean by that is he had some damage, some scar tissue on the cords, something that was getting in the way of a nice clean plain coordination that's typical of most people who have clean chords that come together and vibrate evenly. Even when Chris Cornell was singing in a nice clean mix, in a healthy mix, you'd still hear some of that rasp. It's a natural rasp. It's not a rasp that is manufactured. And I've spoken about this before, but Chris Cornell is a great example of a singer with a natural rasp. Even with good execution, even with efficient technique, he's going to have a rasp. He's going to have some grit in the tone. Contrast this to a singer like Matt Corby, who has an artificial rasp. He has to quote unquote manufacture the rasp when he wants to put it there. Now, most singers start out like Matt, and over time, through lots of touring, lots of singing that's maybe a little bit abusive, they can start to have a natural rasp. Now, I'm not suggesting that will happen to Matt Corby. It may or may not, depending on the stylistic route he chooses to go down and the technical choices that he decides to make. But Chris Cornell certainly did have a lot of touring, a lot of singing, a lot of loud singing behind a live band, electric music. All this stuff tends to lead toward pushing and can tend to lead towards some vocal damage, some scar tissue that leads towards that natural rasp that people actually like. So this can't really be imitated, not in the way that, when I get emails, people say, oh, how do I do this? It's like, well, you can't really, unless you go out and tour, for years, unless you kind of manufacture it and abuse your voice for a significant amount of time, that natural rasp isn't going to be there when you coordinate in the same way that Chris was. So keep that in mind. The other thing about Chris, which is a little bit quirky, is he tends to sing with his mouth closed a lot. You kind of hear this going on quite a bit. It's like you want him to kind of articulate the words a little bit more clearly. I'm not criticizing him so much. I'm just saying this is how it is. Other than that, though, we can just dive in and watch. I just wanted to mention those two caveats just to say you're not necessarily going to be copying Chris Cornell. You're not going to be able to sound like Chris Cornell. Not in the way that a lot of people want to. Now this is hey! He's there. He's only on that little sound. It's not particularly big. It sounds bigger coming through a mic and with a band behind you, but if he was just on his own in a bedroom, it's a small sound right there. Now, one thing that makes it sound bigger is the vowel's very eh. Eh! It kind of sounds like a yell, but it's so tiny and quiet. That's the coordination he's in. Now, the rasp there, that's the natural part of the sound that I can't mimic, not in the way he's doing. Now, I could add some fry in. Could try and add some rasp in, some fry in. but it's not an authentic rasp, yeah? When he does this, hey, when he does that, it will rasp. If he coordinates in that way, it will rasp, or it would have rasped if he wasn't 6 feet under. So many times people will get confused. They will kind of think, they won't necessarily hear the sound as accurately as they should do. They'll think it's bigger than it is. And it's a small sound. Listen to this. Just here. Token. This here, because it's so wide, token, it sounds yelly, but it's not pushed. This is one thing that Chris Cornell did well. He hit the vowel real pure and open, but he didn't yell. Yeah, most people, if they go token, they'll yell. They won't be able to token. They won't be able to keep that vowel in the pocket. When they open up, it will drop out the mouth. He had no problem with that at all. And that open vowel, it makes it sound big. It makes it sound, quote unquote, like a yell, when really it's a mix. And this is why learning singers get so confused, because they'll hear some singers yelling healthily, other singers yelling unhealthily. They won't have any idea how to distinguish between the two. They won't even necessarily hear the differences between the two types of sound and the different types of coordinations. But this is one thing that Chris did well. Even when he was wide open, he wasn't really yelling. Keep in mind, this guy was very close to the edge of what you can do healthily and unhealthily. Some of that natural rasp comes in because of his history of pulling chest in the past. My view on Chris is he was a chest puller who was abusive, and over time he learned to do it more healthily. And then he had this natural rasp as a result of the chest pulling that he'd done in the past, and he kind of just lived there very nicely. And this little example here is a good example. It's a wide open yell, but it's a healthy coordination. And those are my thoughts, guys. Listen, if you want deep singing knowledge you'll get nowhere else, hit that subscribe button, pound the thumbs up if you've enjoyed this video, and I'll see you tomorrow. Take care. Bye!